Okay, shalom everybody. Having some lighting problems. How do I fix that? It's like some. Anyway, I'm a little sad, but I'm mostly happy. I'm sad because I was doing a brainstorming session like a while ago, and I just realized everything I said, no one could hear. No one could hear what I was saying, but I didn't know that because anyway, I didn't know until I realized my plug wasn't even plugged in. So I'm just going to do a dry run of what I'm going to present on this coming Shabbat for the either the Zoom meeting or the Wire meeting. So let's do that. I'm going to time myself starting now. Okay. So, you know those, can you tell the difference? Spot the difference games? So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to read two verses to you, and I want you to spot the difference. Okay. So, I'm going to go over Isaiah 61, verse 1. Isaiah 61, verse 1. And then I'm going to read those two. And then I'm going to say afterwards, I'm going to say, did you spot the difference? Okay, before you answer, let me read. Uh, let me read from Luke chapter 4, verse 18 and 19. And I want you all, as I'm reading these verses, so you know what, let's just start off by everyone take their Bibles or your digital Bible, whatever you have. I want you to follow with me, because the key thing in this is that I don't want you to just take my words and believe what I'm saying like it's the gospel, because I'm just a man. You prove using your own scriptures what's in front of you, whether what I am presenting to you is the truth. Let the Bible prove itself. If my goal here is to push my own agenda or to make myself look smart, or you know what I mean? If I'm not trying to bring glory to the name of Jehovah, anything I do here or say is not really from him. It's from me. There would be my words, and I bring glory to myself. But if I present his words and I let his own word interpret itself, then all the glory be to Jehovah, which it rightly should be. So, I'm going to go read Luke 4, verses 18 and 19. And now I'm going to ask you, now that I've read it, which one does it line up with? The first one or the second one? The first version I read of Isaiah 61, verse 1, or the second one? And you can answer. You can tell me right now. Just type it in or just talk, say it audio. And then all the answers are going to come back. This one. We'll go, yeah, that's right. I'm going to identify to you. Actually, you know what? I shouldn't have told people to take their Bibles out. I should have said, let me just read these. But I want you to open your Bibles to Luke 4, 18 and 19, and then tell me which one it lines up with. A or B? Exhibit A or exhibit B? And then I'll tell you, okay, Exhibit A. Let me tell you a little bit about Exhibit A. Exhibit A is what we know commonly as the Masoretic text. Now, the Masoretic text, why is this important? Okay. The Masoretic text was written back 700 years to as much as 1,000 years after Yahushua had died. And who was it written by? It's written by Jews who denied Mashiach. They denied Yahushua HaMashiach was the Mashiach. These are Jews who are still waiting for the Mashiach. Well, they're dead now, but I mean, at that time, they were still waiting for Mashiach to come on the scene. Why did they write the Masoretic? Why did they put it together in the first place? One of the reasons is because early New Testament believers were using the scriptures that had existed before the Masoretic to convert Jews, converting them to believe that, convincing them essentially that Yeshua is the prophesied Mashiach. They use those scriptures to prove he is the son of Elohim, that he is Elohim, that he is Jehovah. And they didn't like this, so they said, let's write this and take out, well, we're going to go along on this journey with me. You'll see what they changed. And we're going to look at the why. I mean, it's going to be glaringly obvious, but we're going to look at that too. We're going to examine that. And so now let's go to the Septuagint. That's what the other one, Exhibit B. What was that? That was the Septuagint. What is the Septuagint? When was it written? Okay, first of all, it was written 300 to 400 years before Yeshua came on the scene, before he became flesh. And who was it written by? It was written by Jews that, well, they couldn't deny Yeshua because he hadn't come on the scene. So these were Jews that were living in Alexandria, in Greece. And why did they translate? Why did they come up with it in the first place? Well, the reason was, their motivation was not to deny Messiah. It was their motivation. I mean, that's one of many reasons that the Masoretic was written. But the motivation for these Jews, and there's so many legends about it, I won't go through that, was to preserve their identity, preserve their culture. And the thing that was most important to them, to the Jews, was their holy scrolls, their scriptures, the Tanakh. And what they sought out to do, because Hebrew was no longer, I mean, not that it was ever, but we look at our society, okay, look at our modern day, the universal language is English. So you have second generation Italians living in America and in Canada, you know, they don't speak Italian anymore. They have assimilated into the culture. And quite possibly, no speculation on my part, you can do your research yourself, those Hebrew-speaking Jews, they were speaking Greek. Greek was the universal language of trade, of commerce, of philosophy. You know, Paul himself spoke Greek. Timothy, his father was Jewish, but his mother was Greek. You have this blending of cultures happening. So that was one of the reasons why Hebrew was not the main language. It was being pushed aside. And their fear was, hey, we could lose our culture, our identity, our way of life, the Torah, the Tanakh. So that's one of the reasons they did it. So let's look at the first verse here, the first scripture I wanted to look at. If you would turn to Psalm 40, verse 5, and please use your Bibles. Don't just listen to my voice, but let's turn to it all together. Psalm 40, chapter 40, and verse 5. Okay. So we're going to read just that one verse, Psalms 40 and verse 5. We're going to read that. I read it. So now, let me ask you all to turn to Hebrews, chapter 10, verse 5. Let's see what it says. It backs up exactly what the Septuagint says. And this is talking about what was Psalm 40, verse 5. Let me look it up just to be sure. I don't want to take it out of Psalm 40, verse 5. A mental note here, Psalm 40, verse 5. Just come naturally. I believe this is the first scripture actually that. Wait, is this the one? I don't think it's the one. Psalm 40, verse 5. Is that it? No, I don't think that's the one. Oh, no. Okay, let me just double check. What did I write here? just make sure I got it right. Oh, it is. It's Psalm 40. A body have prepared for me. I don't know why I said verse 5. It's actually verse 6. It says, a body have prepared. Sacrifice and offering you did not require, but a body have prepared for me. And if you look at Hebrews 10, verse 5, it says the exact same thing. In fact, if I just go there right now, let me just expand on what the thought is here, because I'm not just going to throw scriptures at you and say, this is different, and this is different, and this lines up, and that lines up. No, there's more to it than that. The law, talking about the Torah, the blood of bulls and goats is powerless to remove sins. That's why it says, sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but you provide for me a body. Whereas the Masoretic says, you've opened my ear. A sacrifice of the sacrifice of his body, showing that he had to come into the world and die. Hebrews 10:5, it backs up exactly what we're looking at. And this book, just wanted to tell you that the book of Hebrews was written to Jewish Christians. We call them today Messianic Jews. So the object, the goal of this letter, or this book, or this epistle, was to explain to those who are well acquainted with the Old Covenant how that Old Covenant has now been fulfilled by Yeshua. Right, so I guess I should say more about this one, but anyway, for the sake of time, I'm going to move to the next one. I mean, obviously, I'll build on that on the live presentation. I only have 17 minutes left. Deuteronomy 32, verse 43. So we're going to read those two, and then we're going to back it up with Hebrews 1 and verse 6. Verse 1, verse 6 says here, let all the angels, not it, I think it's Hebrews. Yeah, no, it is verse 6. Let all the angels bow down before him. But it doesn't say that in the Masoretic, but it does say that here in the New Testament. In verse 6 says, when Elohim brought the firstborn into the world, we just kept that Sunday, the wave sheaf offering. It's the first of the first fruits. That's what Yeshua is. He's the firstborn, the first of the firstborn, the first of the first fruits. And it says here, let all the angels of Elohim bow down before him. That doesn't line up with their belief system, that they should only worship Jehovah. But it's saying, let them bow down before this, whoever this him is. But if you look at who he's talking about Yeshua, that he should be worshipped. So, I don't really need to say anymore. It's right there before us. Okay. I could expand on it on the live presentation, but for the sake of this dry run, I'm going to go to the next one, which is Isaiah 29. Isaiah 20 vein. It says that the fear, like there's something being taught. It's Yeshua said himself in Matthew 15. He isn't reading from the Masoretic. He's reading from what the actual scriptures were in his time. And this is what it read. It read like this. But vainly do they worship me. But in vain do they worship me, for they teach but the precepts of men. We're focusing on the first half of that verse. He is using this, quoting Isaiah 29:13, as a weapon against the Pharisees and the teachers of the Torah because of their hypocrisy. Isaiah was inspired to write this, not just so that it could be recorded in history, but so that Yeshua would speak these words and fulfill the meaning, fulfill the purpose of why they're written, because he had to call these hypocrites out. Okay, so I still have 10 minutes left. I might have time to go over another one. So if you want me to go over another one, I will do that. And that's Psalm 4, verse 4. And the parallel verse is Ephesians chapter 4. I'm just going to keep going until my time runs out. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 28. I didn't memorize this one, so I'm going to have to actually read it. So I'll just wait for everyone to get there. Ephesians 4:28 says, be angry, yet do not sin. And that's what it says. It lines up perfectly with what it says in the Septuagint. It's okay to be angry, but do not sin. Because if we remain in anger, you allow opportunity for the devil to turn that anger, to turn it into a wrong anger. There is a good anger. Phinehas was angry, but he was angry because he had zeal for Elohim, and he killed, the two who were causing the plague on the children of Israel. But there is a bad anger. There's an evil anger where you're not zealous for Jehovah because his name is being slandered, but you're zealous for yourself, for your own greediness, your own reputation, because you feel slighted, because you feel hurt. You don't care about Elohim, you care about yourself. You're your own Elohim, and so your anger is expressed by jealousy, by hatred towards your brother, to the point that you would murder him, such as Cain did. So, I mean, these are examples that you can see that clearly the New Testament itself, I don't have to convince you. I don't have to push a narrative and make myself look smart and say, see, this is older, so it's just automatically right. No, the New Testament, your scriptures themselves, the ones you're reading before your eyes, I didn't put that I didn't put that book in your hands or alter your translations in any way. It's already there. It's clear as day. It says exactly what the Septuagint says, to the intent and the spirit of the words. So with that, I have to, I guess I'll conclude by saying that, when I volunteered to do this, I know that there are many topics that I could have chosen from. Obviously, there's a lot of bad news going on, historically bad news, unprecedented apocalyptic events. But I'm not here to use the time to make you worry or take the focus away from Elohim, because I mean, this is his day, it's holy time, and it's not that it's. I just don't want to talk about that. I feel like, although I did try, I did sit down for a good half hour or more, trying to squeeze out some points, some talking points, and then I realized, this is a conventional sermon for a conventional congregation, like a church. It's like, it's too churchy. It's too. It's very like organized religion, like, and that's not the way. I'm not trying to make myself look smart or to impress people. I really was pushing hard to come up with something, and I just couldn't for the life of me. The moment that I decided to speak on this topic, it was effortless. We had just finished a 4-hour stream, recall, just on Tuesday. I had no energy. I just hit a wall. I couldn't come up with anything. But the moment that I prayed about it and I said, "Yeah, do you want me to speak about this, about your word?" It was like I was in the middle of a storm. Not a bad storm. It's if the first topic was me standing in the middle of a desert, and no rain was coming because it doesn't rain in a desert. Once I decided to talk on this topic, it was like it started raining in the desert, and not just a little, like heavy rain, right? And so I knew right then and there, especially after a 4 hour stream, I had all the energy in the world. I could speak for 3 hours about this. I could probably the whole day, but I'm only given 30 minutes, and I'm going to stick to that. I don't want to go over time. I don't want to bore anybody either. It's not my goal. My goal is to just, magnify Jehovah, bring all the glory to him. Because if I'm speaking from my words and my opinions and trying to make myself look smart, or, try to be like, oh, let me be the successor to Joseph, that is not the right motivation, and that is not my goal at all. The reason I volunteered was, yes, I do want to help, but if something isn't done, I mean, if I just say I want to help and I don't do anything about it, the ball won't roll. We got to get the ball rolling, and there's such a great work that has to be done, but the laborers are few. So I thought, let me help a little bit. And again, I don't want to push my narrative or to make myself, to glorify myself, because if these are just my words, or if I just share my opinions, I bring glory to myself, and my words aren't true, my witness isn't true. But if I speak the words of Yah, and I let his word explain itself, prove itself, then I give glory to him, because those aren't my words, so those are his words. I barely had to expand on it. All I had to do was just turn to, Hebrews, turn to Ephesians, and the word lines up perfectly as to what, the scriptures are saying in the day of Yeshua. I'm very thankful that Jehovah opened the eyes of Joseph to understand the new moons, to understand the sabbatical years, the Shemitah, and the Jubilee cycles, because it's one thing to understand it, but to keep it is a whole other thing. It's a whole other story. What Jehovah has done is he restored the ancient paths, even with Becca and her witnesses about the Aviv barley and the sighted crescent, visible crescent moon. Those are restorations of the old ways. I believe that what I just presented to you today is along the same vein. How did Yehoshua keep Elohim's calendar? By sighted moon, by the Aviv barley. He was explicit, and he said that. It's summer when, it's winter when. You can be sure they were, they had an awareness of, well, Yeshua knows the Shemitah, he knows the Jubilees. He's the one who gave them that Torah. So I'm telling you that, what are the scriptures then? It begs the question, what were the scriptures in his day? If that was the calendar in his day, and this is the Shabbat, and this is the way that they walked, what was the word that they read? It was the Septuagint. It existed, it was recorded and produced 300, 400 years before Yeshua was born. It was the authoritative voice of the Holy Scriptures on his day. I cannot prove to you whether he read from the Greek Septuagint. All I can do is read the words that he read as it is written in the New Testament, and I just proved to you they line up with the Septuagint. So it doesn't matter whether he spoke Hebrew or Greek, or whether he read from the Hebrew or the Greek. The fact is, the words are the same. But when we look at the other text, the Masoretic, the words are not the same. And there's a problem there. So, it's important that we focus on the word of Elohim. It is a light to our lives. King David said as much. The Torah is a light. His Tanakh, all scriptures is given by divine inspiration. So it was my hope that I shined a light on the light, that I magnified the word. I wasn't trying to, be like a pastor or whatever, minister, and just give you the same old story, but I wanted to focus on the word because that's what brought us to this walk. It's not some person's sermon that was so convincing and they impressed you with their oratory skills. You know, it's not about that. It's about who called you. It was the Father. The Father drew you in. If He doesn't call you, if He doesn't open your eyes, doesn't matter what I say or how I say it or what scriptures I use. It's Him selecting you and opening your mind. But it's up to you. We all have a choice to soften our hearts and obey and listen. To listen and do. Like Shema Yisrael means listen and do. Not just listen, but to do, to obey. So we all have the choice. But He does the calling, but we still, although He does call us, many are called, but few are chosen. So we have to make sure that we choose to walk the way. We know Yeshua said, I am the way, the truth, the life. We have to walk that way. And that was my goal today, to do that. I'm going to finish a little under time. Well, because I didn't expand on the scriptures, so I didn't read them in full. So I got to do this nice little conclusion. So that's the end. We can discuss, and that's it. Thank you. That's a preview of what I'm going to present on Shabbat. If they tell me that you can't talk on this topic, I'll just say, okay, well, then you have to find another speaker because this is the only topic I'm going to talk about. And I just volunteered, because I want to get the ball rolling. But, Yah willing, whatever He wants to be done. So if He says, if He moves, whoever is going to approve this message to say that you can't talk about that, then I'll say, well, I won't talk then. But if they say, that, yeah, okay, that's fine, you can talk about that, then I will speak, present it. But a little bit better because I didn't read the scriptures in full. I had so much time remaining. But this is a general outline, a rough draft of what this would sound like, how it would be formatted. So I think that's how I'd open up with that question. Do you know that game? Notice the difference? So we're going to go read the scriptures right away. We're just going to dive into the scriptures. No anecdotes. No, I'm not going to say, oh, this is the story of the man with the one leg or something. There's a woman with two cats and then, I knew this lady, like no stories. So just go right into the word. Just dive into it. You're not here to hear me tell you about my life. We're just here to, actually, you know what? Before I forget, I have to mention this. This is about my life, so I digress. Joseph was talking about on the Zoom meeting how he was doing security detail at the feast, and they told him, watch out for this guy with tassels, right? That man who Job was looking for, actually, he's the same man who actually Jehovah used that man as a vehicle, as an instrument to bring to my attention this topic. He didn't tell me to present this. He just showed me this psalm, the very first one I showed you, Psalm 40, verse 5. Verse 6, pardon me. And as much as I've been excited for the word, actually, when I first was called, I was 17 years old. And the Bible was just the Bible, it was just literature. But then He opened my eyes to see it not just as words on paper, but as a guide to life. And He expected more out of me than just what I wanted to do. So I realized you got to live by that. And everything was new to me and exciting. And I gotta be honest. I gotta be honest that I lost my zeal. But it started to, I'd say I'm on fire again, especially the last year, ever since I discovered the Septuagint. It's like everything old is new again. So I'm very thankful for that. I'm thankful for Joseph. I'm thankful for all of you and this opportunity to speak. So just thank you. I'm gonna end the stream now. That's how it's gonna go. Okay. Yeah.